Naval forces in War Thunder is heating up this patch, with a power creep that I don't see halting anytime soon. Good afternoon, you wee bastards, and welcome back to War Thunder with Koala. So lads, the Brooklyn class and Kirov class cruisers are coming to War Thunder in update 1.87. This is big news, and I mean that quite literally. These things are massive. Now, these vessels, these capital ships, are still of the light cruiser class or order of ships, but we're really starting to progress upwards here, getting ever closer to the heavy cruisers, which could then lead us into battleships. Lads, I think it's only a matter of time before we start seeing ships like the Baltimore class, Grash B, maybe New Orleans. The old World of Warships player in me is getting kind of pumped for War Thunder Naval Forces all over again. So guys, I don't generally cover dev blogs for Naval Forces. Even though I do dev blog content for most of the vehicles announced before an update, I rarely, if ever, cover ships. You'll notice there hasn't been any Naval Forces coverage on the channel for a good few patches. Actually, it's been a full 8 months since I've touched on it properly. The reason I don't generally do dev blog content for Naval Forces is because firstly, I don't generally play Naval Forces. I don't have knowledge of the nuances of the game mode, the meta, how the game plays, and what tactics are commonly used, abused, or what have you. For example, if I never played air battles, I might say that hugging your own airbase AA for cover was a good tactic, whereas in actuality that's one of the most cancerous, autistic things you can do. Guys, please stop doing it. So I couldn't really say much about predicting how a new ship or boat would play. I just don't know enough for my prediction or opinions to matter, and as for historical knowledge, well, my knowledge of ships is basically non-existent. I know the names, classes, not much else. I could barely even tell you the decade of their introduction without looking it up, let alone talk about the development, history, or real-life values like mobility or armament. With that in mind, I'm going to ask you lads to please be kind and bear with me if I do say something factually or historically wrong, or say something that sounds very silly gameplay-wise, because this really isn't in my area. But due to popular demand from some of my viewers who do have an interest in Naval Forces development and have been asking me to do some more gameplay on the channel or talk about the dev blogs, that's exactly what we're going to do, and we'll see as to the success of this video whether I continue this in a big way. So make sure you leave a like on this video if you do want to see more Naval Forces coverage, and let's get into these cruisers. So the USS Brooklyn, lead ship of her class of 7 light cruisers, was built under the constraints of the London Naval Treaty in the mid-1930s. Originally intended to carry a relatively small armament of 6 6-inch guns, the appearance of the Japanese Mogami class convinced the US to significantly up the armament to 15 6-inch guns in 5 triple mount turrets spread across the length of the ship. This, along with the 8 5-inch secondary cannons, which also function as air defense given their capability of air bursting rounds, made the Brooklyn class the most heavily armed light cruiser of the US Navy. The class was used predominantly throughout the Mediterranean campaign, and all 7 Brooklyn-class cruisers survived the war, going on to become part of several other nations' navies, such as Chile, who retained it in service until the 1990s. The ship is a hair over 600 feet long, boasts up to 127mm of belt armor and 50mm on the deck, displaces over 9,500 tons of water, and can achieve a top speed of over 32 knots, although expect this to be one sluggish beast. Your armor will not protect you from other cruisers, as well as most destroyers, and with the arrangement of your engines, it's likely that a single well-aimed salvo from an enemy capital ship could completely immobilize you. Players should therefore use this ship to steamroll directly towards the enemy rather than attempting to turn in and engage smaller vessels, and only using the rear 2 turrets late game to engage any targets that may end up towards your stern. This definitely isn't sounding, at least to me, like a ship you should go broadside with, as it's likely that the first salvo will bring you to a standstill while the second will blow your ammunition, and with 3 turrets all stacked together towards the bow, it won't exactly be difficult to hit. Nevertheless, the high firepower and imposing size of the USS Brooklyn will make it an extremely powerful vessel, although remember to keep an eye out for PT boats coming to take you out with torpedoes. The Soviet Navy's Kirov-class cruisers, not to be confused with the 1970s nuclear-powered missile-carrying battle cruiser class of the same name, is a class of 6 light cruisers also built in the mid-30s. Although technically a heavy cruiser according to the London Naval Treaty, the Kirov class was designated by the Soviet Union as a light cruiser due to its displacement, which is significantly less than that of the Brooklyn at under 8,000 tons. Originally based off of the Italian Condottieri, the Soviets mounted 3 of their own turrets aboard the ship, each housing 3 180mm cannons. That's 7 inches to you Americans. Despite boasting this extremely heavy armament, enough to classify it is a heavy cruiser by the London Treaty, the fact that these guns are jammed into an area not exactly designed for their size means that the Kirov will have a poor rate of fire compared to contemporary ships. Basically, you'd better be a good aim, because if you miss your first shot, you're probably going to die before getting off another. The main battery is complemented by 6 100mm secondaries and many smaller AA caliber guns, along with, unlike the Brooklyn, 2 triple launching torpedo tubes. The Kirov is 20 feet longer than the Brooklyn, as well as slightly faster by 4 knots. This, however, comes at the price of a significant lack of belt armor, only 50mm, which means players will have to rely on constantly changing positions between firing off salvos, and this ship may be the adverse of the Brooklyn, and that you'll want to take it in to find smaller vessels where your armor will still matter. However, in that case, you'll have to keep a very close eye out for torpedoes, as despite a higher power to weight ratio, I expect this cruiser to have an even larger turning circle than the Brooklyn, given its increased length. The last of the Kirov class cruisers was scrapped in the 1970s when its namesake, the nuclear-powered, guided missile-carrying battle cruiser, was first born. Once again though, as with all these predictions, please take them with about 5 grains of salt, because I am not an experienced naval forces player and have not actually played a single cruiser since CBT. Actually, I've only even faced them possibly 10 times since then, so we're really, out of my depth here. I'll let myself out. So lads, these new cruisers are going to be the biggest ships in the game, and the most powerful as far as caliber of main armament is concerned. However, being big makes them vulnerable, and particularly with the Kirov's long reload, I can see it being quite threatened by destroyers. These light cruisers will be like the battleships of World of Warships. You'll be able to put the pressure on them by peppering them with shells from ships with a superior rate of fire. They'll certainly be the best cruisers we have so far, and probably set at a battle rating of 5.7 above our current 5.3s, but honestly, I don't see them changing up the gameplay style from previous cruisers like the USS Raleigh or Krasny Krim all that much. You'll likely employ the same basic tactics with nuances that we'll find in time, of course. But what the addition of these two vessels does mean, calling them vehicles just doesn't seem right. What it does mean though is that Guardian's not afraid to power creep naval forces. These are some very signature ships, the USS Brooklyn and the Kirov. We'll likely see the addition of more ships of this class, the Kirov class being split into 3 pairs. The Kalinin as ship of the 3rd pair would make a good 6.0 along with the US Navy's Cleveland class, before we start seeing heavy cruisers at battle ratings of say 6.3. There are light cruisers that could be added at battle ratings of say 4.7 preceding our current cruisers, which would help to extend the overlap between smaller and larger ships within battles, which in my opinion is a good thing. These vessels do best when they have an adverse type of enemy to fight, rather than just going head to head against their own type. The thing is, what will other nations get? I mean, the Soviet Navy really doesn't have that much as far as heavy cruisers go, and another question is, what could Germany get to combat these cruisers? The Leipzig class? That's about it before we head into the territory of extremely powerful heavy cruisers with 11-inch guns and a lot of belt armor. Think Graf Spee or Prince Eugen. Basically what I'm saying is this power creep has to happen very quickly so that within a couple of patches we can get down to the stage where the tech trees are evened out, because for a little while, things may not be exactly balanced. It's actually a very good thing that we have mixed battles for the sake of having these ships on both teams, so as not to provide one team with an obvious advantage. The thing is, the gameplay of naval forces still isn't conducive to cruiser gameplay. Even the light cruisers we already have are too cumbersome to have a significant effect on the match in most cases, and the motor gunboats are the ones capping zones, hoping not to be outmatched by the destroyers on the other side. The cruisers take too long to reach the battle and start capturing zones that it's difficult for them to have any noticeable effect on the outcome, and so along with the power creep that I suspect is coming, we also desperately need some reworks to the way in which the game functions. Something like World of Warships 4-cap game mode might honestly work, although remember that the light cruisers in World of Warships are more maneuverable than the destroyers that we have. I think Guardian's going to have a lot on their hands trying to create a game structure by which cruisers have the same level of influence as destroyers and gunboats do as to the outcome of a match, which means that we might have to wait a little while before brand new types of ships like heavy cruisers make it into the game, and for a wee bit, as I said, nations may not be 100% balanced. Either way, these models look amazing, they're gorgeous ships, absolutely massive vessels. Seriously, just imagining rounding an island in an MGB and seeing one of these barreling towards you is It's going to be good. The little video advertisements of cubes with the ships listing over and firing their main batteries or just cutting smoothly through the water, barely even noticing because of how massive they are, is getting me real pumped. And I've actually been getting into some Naval Forces gameplay in the last couple of days, beginning the US Navy grind, which once again I will put up on the channel if the response to this video makes me think that naval content might be worth it. I suspect though that it won't exactly be my most popular content. Anyway lads, that is going to be it for this video on the Brooklyn and Kirov class cruisers, the two new heavy hitters coming to War Thunder Naval Forces in update 1.87. I hope you lads have enjoyed this video. Please leave a like if you did, and be sure to let me know your thoughts on these two new vessels and what you think of the power creep in the comment section down below. Make sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon, join the 360 squad, and remember to come follow me at all the social media links in the video description. Remember that if you'd like to support the channel further, there is also a link down there to my Patreon, where you can support me for as little as $1 a month, and trust me, it all goes a long way. So I'm expecting another dev vlog in the next hour or so, probably a premium since we haven't had any premiums announced for this update yet. But until then lads, always remember, keep your bagpipes to hand, keep your kilt firmly on, and I shall see you next video. I say a wee thank you to these lads for supporting me on Patreon. Seagull Nuts, DA261, Latvian Wolf, Gisli Arson, and Dark Recon. You lads are bra. If you wish to join them, come check out the link in the description below.